Welcome to the Keep Teaching webinar, Assignments and Grades in Blackboard. My name is Dr. Jennifer Pedersen, and I am the lead instructional designer at Kenai Peninsula College and a member of the Instructional Designers Alliance at UAA. In this workshop, we will navigate the Grade Center, distinguish between assignments and tests, create and deploy a graded assignment, create and deploy a graded test, and use the Needs Grading tool to enter grades, to provide feedback for students, and to annotate directly on student work. And then finally, we'll use the full Grade Center to create columns and to enter grades. There's a couple of things to think about as you begin shifting your assignments and tests from a face-to-face platform to an online platform. You may want to consider things like point values and due dates. Are these going to remain the same, or do you need to change them in some way? You may be using rubrics, and if so, if you do make the modifications, how is that going to change? At the very least, you are going to want to provide a description to students so that they understand exactly how they're going to be graded on any individual assignment. Some things that you may want to consider in these extenuating circumstances is shifting to a pass rewrite or a 0, 75, 100 option. If you're not familiar with either of those, a pass rewrite is where a student maybe submits something and you give it, you know what, this is good to go, I like what I see, you've done what I've asked you to do, or you send it back and you say you've maybe not quite met the goal, so you're going to get one more chance. If you think about the 0, 75, 100 options, it's kind of a play off of the idea of pass-fail, right? So you have a 0, which would be a fail, and a 100, which would clearly be a pass, but you've also added a 75 in there. So when you think about 75, think about what a C paper or assignment would look like. So 0 if a student does nothing, a C if they've just done the basics. If a student work is a B or an A quality, then they get that 100 option. I'm not saying that these are the only two things that you must use. I'm just giving you some things to think about as you shift your assignments and your tests over from face-to-face into the online platform. Let's get started. First, log into Blackboard and navigate to the My Courses module and select your course. The very first thing you're going to want to do is to double check that your edit mode is set to on. From here, we're going to go back to content. And where we spent our time in build content in the last webinar, this time we're going to focus on the assessments options. You'll see we have test and assignment. So I want to highlight the differences between tests and assignments. If you want students to upload a document or perhaps write only 1 or 2 paragraphs on a single topic, your best bet is to make it an assignment. You want to note, however, that assignments cannot be automatically graded. You're going to have to manually grade them yourself. If you want to grade by question, you can create a test. Some types of questions, like true, false, or multiple choice, do allow for automatic grading. So let's go ahead and click Assignment. We're going to give it a name. We'll say Project 2. Here's where we're going to provide a set of instructions for your students. I highly suggest including in those instructions not only what you want them to do, but at least a brief description on how they are going to be graded. If you are already using a rubric, you can use the Attach Files option here to upload the rubric itself. If you'd like, you can enter a due date, but you don't necessarily have to. The thing that you do have to do is put points possible. Now, you do have some flexibility in terms of how you want to set this particular assignment. So let's expand submission details. It's going to be an individual submission for this demonstration, and you'll see here a single attempt. I suggest selecting multiple attempts and at least giving students 2 attempts to upload their assignment to you. That way, if they hit submit and they realize, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to do something, they can fix what they need to and resubmit it without having to reach out to you to say, hey, can you let me resubmit my assignment? You have some options for grading. You can enable anonymous grading or delegated grading, but for our purposes, I think we can just go ahead and skip over that and move to the display of grades. So the default is set to score, and we don't have a secondary. You can change that if you want, but in the spirit of keeping things simple, I think leaving it as score is going to be your best option. It will always be included in the grade center unless you uncheck this particular box. But for us, again, keeping it simple, make sure it's included in the grading calculations. So I want to talk really briefly about availability because it's different than the due date that's set above. A due date is simply when students need to have their submission made by, whereas making the assignment available allows students to not only see the assignment, but also gives them a place to upload it. So the default is to make the assignment available, but that it's always a good idea to just double check that that is selected. You can also track the number of views if you would like. Once you are satisfied with your options, you just click submit. As you may recall, it's going to go to the bottom of our list, and we can drag and drop it anywhere we would like. I do want to point out too that if you have created like weekly folders, for example, you can enter into that particular weekly folder and build it right there as well, right? So you can simply go back to that same menu bar, click assessments and assignment, and then that's where it will be housed. So for moving on, let's choose test. And remember, we're in this content folder, so let's just assume this is where I want the test to populate for students. Our first thing that we're going to do is click create a new test. We're going to give it a name. We'll say section 5 exam. I suggest providing a description for students. Maybe this would be chapters 11 through 15, for example. Maybe it was based off of a lecture series that you gave, something where students can realize, oh, that's what I'm doing. Now for the instructions, there's a couple of things that I highly recommend you include. And those are time and attempts. You'll want to let students know if this is a timed exam, if it's not a timed exam, how much time they may have if you do choose to set a limit, and then how many attempts that they have. It's really important to highlight that information up front and get it in front of students' faces as often as you can. Once you have entered a description and instructions, click submit. Here's where we're going to build the questions themselves. So I'm going to show you two different types. I'm going to show you one that requires manual grading and one that allows you to have automatic grading done for you. So the first one I'm going to show you is essay. You don't need to do anything with the question title. You can just start off with the question itself. You can also leave the answer blank unless you want to show students an example of what it is that you are looking for. You can add that rubric if you would like to. I suggest leaving that alone for right now and simply clicking submit. So if you build questions you build a bunch of essay questions, you will have to grade them all. I do want to show you too that you can set the number of points possible over here in the left. Could be a pretty big essay question. Now let's go back to create questions and let's choose multiple choice. You'll see similar options here, right? The question title, you can skip over that and simply type your question here. You can select some different options on how you want those answer options to show, or you can just leave it with the default. Well, we're going to go with maybe there are 6 number of answers. Probably not, probably 4. Maybe we'll leave it at 4. Or we'll just fill them in for now. So you'll see a little radio button next to each answer. You want to select that for the correct answer. And now you have some options down here. You can leave feedback for students when they select the correct response, and also feedback for students that would show up anytime they selected any of the incorrect responses. You have a couple of different options down here. You can click submit and this will take you back to that main menu, or you can submit and create another. So if you are doing a whole set of multiple choice questions, you can simply submit and create another until you've worked through the entire thing. You'll notice we have the same functionality over here where we can set the number of points possible. Once you have completed adding all of your questions, you're going to select OK in the bottom right-hand corner. And this takes us back to our original screen where we chose create a new test. This time we're going to select the one that we just built, Section 5 exam, and click submit. This is going to allow us to have more options in terms of actually deploying the test. So all of this follows over. Whatever you put for the description, you will see here. I suggest selecting show test description to students before they begin and showing the instructions before they begin. That way students are clear on what the exam is and what their instructions are that they need to follow. You'll want to make it available to students. I suggest in our set of circumstances that as soon as you build a test, you just go ahead and make it available to students. If you select add a new announcement for this test, it will automatically populate an announcement in your home screen that alerts students that a test has been created. I also suggest allowing at least a minimum of 2 attempts. This will account for any technical difficulties that perhaps your students might encounter. It might also account for a baby who woke up a little bit early and is crying. It will just save you and your students a little bit of heartache if they are allowed to start it at least more than once. Once you are satisfied that you have set all of your options, you can hit submit. But I do want to show you one more thing before I hit submit is the test presentation. You can allow students to see it all at once, which is what I suggest. You can randomize the questions, which will shift the questions around in terms of order, so your students won't get the same questions in this, well, they'll get the same questions, but they won't be in the same order. And then you can click submit. So you'll notice we are in that content folder, and now we have an exam for students. Let's switch over into student preview really fast and just see what that looks like for students. We're going to select content because we know where we put it, and the content folder. And here's our exam. So let's go ahead and click on it just for curiosity's sake and see what it looks like. So again, our description shows up, our instructions that highlights the amount of time possible, the number of attempts possible. Any additional information that you have set within your test options will show up here. And if we select begin, here's the multiple choice. I'm going to say it's B. Here's my answer. And I'm going to save and submit. I'm going to say OK. Let's go to exit preview. Now I'm going to do something that I don't normally recommend so that you can see a submission on the other side. The default is to delete the preview user and all data. This is recommended. That way, if you do anything in your course as a student, it won't carry over. However, I'm going to select keep the preview user so you can see it in the gradebook. Okay, so we have created a graded assignment and we've created a graded test. So let's go over to the Grade Center. It's going to be in the main course navigation menu. At the bottom under the control panel, you'll see Grade Center. It will probably be collapsed, so you just click on it to expand and you'll notice we have needs grading and full Grade Center as well as assignments and tests. Let's go ahead and click on Needs Grading first. When we set the assignment, we created a place for students to upload their submission. So every time a student completes that assignment and sends you something, it will show up here in the Needs Grading tool. You can see what those two things are. And remember that Section 5 exam is going to show up because we added an item that requires manual grade. So for Project 1, let's go ahead and click on the user attempt. So you'll see what the student submitted for you in line right here, and you have a couple of options available. You have a drawing tool, which if you're using a mouse, I don't recommend because it's not the most user-friendly. If you have a stylus, you'll probably have a better chance with that one. Although, for our purposes, we recommend using the comment dialog box because it's a little bit easier to use and you won't run into as many hiccups. So as you're going through and reading the student submission, if you see something you want to comment on, you're going to select the tool. You'll see crosshairs and you just simply click where you want the comment to appear, and you're going to provide feedback. And click post. If you don't close out of the screen up here, you can keep going and you can add more comments. And just keep posting the comments as you work through the paper. When you're finished with that, click close. And then you have a couple of different options available for you here. This is where you're going to set the grade and leave feedback. Once you have provided feedback to the student, click submit. And you'll notice that it jumped me immediately to the second item that was there, right? So I am now looking at the exam. So you'll see the multiple choice, the answer was incorrect. However, if you want to do partial points and you forgot to set it up initially, you can manually change the grade within this Needs Grading tool. You will see the answer that the student typed in. Mine is simply one word, but you would have the paragraph or two that the student submitted. You can provide feedback here. You can leave the number of points possible. You can provide overall feedback for the entire thing here in the feedback to learners dialog box. This would be information that the student would see. Anything that you annotate in the grading notes, only yourself or maybe a TA if you have one, those are the only people who would see the grading notes. You're going to select Save and Exit. And you'll see that there is now nothing to do within this Needs Grading tool because we've cleared it all out. As students submit their work, you will see it populated here. Let's move over into the full grade center. And I already did this. Shame on me for not putting it back. What you will see in your default is the last name, the first name, the username, the student ID, the total, and you'll see another column on your screen called weighted total. And I'm going to tell you to save yourself a whole lot of hassle and don't use it. So you can do a couple of different things. You can either ignore it or you can choose the drop-down menu and you can click delete column. I'm just going to delete this one. Well, actually, I'm not. But you would just select OK. And that will delete that particular column and you will never have to worry about it and you don't have to worry about messing it up. So a couple of things about the full grade center right off the bat. It really kind of looks like an old-fashioned paper grade book. To navigate through, you're going to use the scroll bar that will appear here the more things you populate, and then an up and down scroll arrow over here on the right, depending on the number of students that you have. And it's as simple as that to navigate through the grade center. So let's assume that you want to create a column You're going to come over here to the Create Column tab and click. We're just going to call that one Zoom meeting. Here's your description. You don't necessarily have to put anything in the description, especially since it's just for you. The primary display is automatically set to score, and I suggest leaving it there. You do want to give it a points possible. You can do a due date if you would like to, and yes, we want to include it in the Grade Center calculation, and yes, we want to show it to the students, so you don't need to do anything here, and click Submit. Now, just like in the content area, when we added content, it went to the bottom of our content area. When you add a column, it goes to the end of your gradebook. So if you're not happy with that and you want to change it, you come up here to Manage in this top ribbon, and we're going to select Column Organization. This is the default standard that comes with everything, and it doesn't move. So I suggest just leaving that alone. Down here is going to be all of the assignments that you have created. Here's where you can manipulate them however you would like to see them. This is how students will see them too, by the way. So let's just maybe group a few things just for grins. Okay, once you get it the way you like it, we're going to click Submit. And you'll notice that now the column organization has changed to reflect what you just selected. I also want to point out that, Project 2, this was the assignment that we just created together. So you'll notice that it created a column. Same with the Section 5 exam. And here's the 50 points that we already graded for the student submission. So you can grade directly from the full grade center as well. If you choose the drop-down menu, let's do this one. And we want to say grade attempts. It's going to pull all of our graded attempts for us here, and you can navigate through the forward and the back arrows as well. I'm just going to go ahead and exit. You can also manually input a grade directly into any grade cell by clicking in it, manually putting your score in, selecting OK, and now it shows up. In this webinar, we have navigated the Grade Center. We've distinguished between when to use an assignment and when to create a test. We have created and deployed a graded assignment and a graded test. We've used the Needs Grading tool to enter grades, to give feedback, and to annotate directly on student work, and then using the full Grade Center to manage column organization, to create a column, and to grade directly within the gradebook. Some resources you may find helpful are the Blackboard Instructor Help website, the Academic Innovations and e-learning website, and you can always contact an instructional designer directly by emailing uaa_ai@alaska.edu. Thank you for your patience and your willingness to work on this. We know everyone is feeling stressed and is dealing with a lot on their plates right now, and we appreciate all of your efforts. Please let us know how we can best help you.